Good evening, and you're welcome to the IVES WCW series, Women Crush Wednesday. A happy new year to you. It is such a pleasure that you have graced our screens this year and to grace your screens as well. We hope you're doing great and you're starting this new year on a bright note as well. This is the Women Crush series from IVES. You're welcome to the show. This is our second episode. So if you joined the first one, we're so glad that you're returning to watch this one with us. And if you haven't, we hope that you have a fantastic show with us as well. So welcome to the show. We thank you for your watches, your shares, your likes, your comments on our previous episode. It was so warming to see that you all received it with grace. So thank you very much. We are so glad to have you on the show with us today. And just before we proceed, we'd like to say that it's a new year. And as you set your goals this year, ensure that you set it with the right mindset. You're not just setting new goals for New Year reason, actually, but then you're setting it with the right mindset. Remember, we do not rise to our goals, rather we fall to our system. So you want to make sure that you're doing this New Year the right way. So welcome to the show. And we are glad to have you here. You can catch us on all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, and we are at IBES Nigeria. Today on the show, as you know, the show celebrates women in STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and math. We have an amazing lady on the show with us today. She has a thriving career in math. She actually works in the mother of all professions. She is a teacher. Yes, she is a math teacher. She is an educationist for excellence with experience tutoring teenagers, middle school in mathematics with career spanning over 7 years. We present to you Miss Elo Otobo. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. She's all the way from New York, USA. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this evening, ma'am.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much for joining us on the show. So on the show, we'll be sharing would like you to share your experiences with us as a woman in STEM, not just in math, because yes, it's STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, but also as a woman in mother of all professionals, which is teaching as an educationist as well. So we would first of all like to get to know you. So we'd like you to introduce yourself and everything about you, basically.
Okay, well, my name is Elo Otobo. I have been teaching math for over 7 years. I started off tutoring in a community college where I started to teach classes that are actually geared towards students passing and geared towards them passing the final exam. So even though I was a tutor, sometimes I would also be in the classroom in the college teaching the students on what their teachers reflected on throughout the year. And I usually did that in a 2 to 3 hour course. At that time, I had completed my master's, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to teach or not. Shortly after teaching at the community college, I taught at the community college for about 7 years. Shortly after, I decided to teach with the Department of Education. And I taught with the Department of Education for 6 years. And then I currently teach at a private school, also in New York City. When I was in the Department of Education, I was teaching middle school math, focusing mostly on 6th and 8th grade math, but the 8th grade math, I was teaching what is known here in New York City as the Algebra 1 curriculum, where students sit down for the Regents after they have taken the year-long course. They sit down at the end of the 8th grade for the Regents, and they take the Regents with an expectation to have a 65 and over to pass, and then that counts towards college credits. Even though some high schools would prefer the students to score over an 80, the passing grade for the Regents is a 65. At the moment, I'm currently teaching 5th and 6th grade math in a private school in the city. And in the private school, we really don't have state exams and all these exams. We're pretty much more flexible with our curriculum and how we want to teach it. I currently teach a curriculum known as Connected Mathematics Project, which is pretty much a curriculum that is supposed to aid students in using real world scenarios in learning.
That's really interesting, ma'am. So Did you start your career studying math? Did you start studying math in the university first, or did you switch at some point?
That's actually, I did not ever think I was going to be a math teacher. I actually started off with my bachelor's, which is in leadership and supervision.
Okay.
With that, I actually taught at retail. I mean, not taught. I actually worked at retail stores. So one of the first stores I worked at was Verizon Wireless, which is pretty much a big cell phone industry in America. I don't know if they really even stand in Nigeria, but yeah, so I worked with Verizon Wireless, and I was there for, I want to say, about 5 or 6 years. And then while I was working with them, I started pursuing my master's in career change, focusing on adolescent education and specializing in mathematics. And once I was done with that, then I did a couple of other retail jobs. I worked as a waitress for a while, and then I started working as a teacher in the public school system.
Okay, so what inspired the change? Because you said you studied leadership initially,
Yes.
and then you changed. So what inspired your change to math and teaching as well?
Well, to teaching, because I knew I didn't want to do retail. Like it's just, I don't know. I just started phasing out of like retail, and I know it wasn't something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. My aunt is a teacher, so I remember when I was young, I used to help her grade a lot of papers, and for whatever reason, then I thought it was fun. I no longer think it's fun anymore. But as a kid, you think everything is fun. You want to help. You want to do this. It's not the same when you're an adult. So I understand why my auntie really was excited when I would help her grade. But anyway, why math? Math specifically because I was torn whether I either wanted to be a French teacher or a math teacher. I wasn't as proficient in French at the time, but I was willing to do whatever it took for me to, become a French teacher. I saw some of the exams I would have to take, and it was kind of discouraging because, again, I didn't feel like I was at the level I would have needed to be a French teacher. So I decided to take the math route, the subject I struggled with the most in school, because I felt like, sometimes when you struggle, it's easier for you to relate to other people, through your struggles. And now that I'm a math teacher, and even when I tell my students about my struggles and I tell them how terrible I was in math, they don't believe me. They're like, there's no way you're a terrible math. And I tell them, no, really, I was. I'm actually I studied to be a math teacher, and I wanted to be a teacher because of the struggles I had in math. And I thought I couldn't overcome those struggles. So I decided to pursue it. And yeah, now I'm a teacher, 3 certification exams later.
Wow, that's so interesting and stuff. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so I also struggled with math. Oh, yes, pretty much. I actually also struggled in math as it was death of me, really. So yes, it's so encouraging to see that people are particularly taking it seriously enough to want to impact children, especially, and help them navigate this path as well. Thank you so much for doing that. So we are in the COVID era, and COVID has affected every sector, really, even education as well. How would you say it has how much or how far would you say it has impacted on the educational sector? And now that we're in the post-COVID era, even though we still have outbreaks here and there, and we still have to shut down some things, reopen and stuff. So how are you, is the educational system, and are you as a teacher navigating the post-COVID era?
Okay, so I'm just going to try to make this one as quick as possible. So COVID was obviously for everybody, not just me, a nightmare in the sense that, in 1 week I was teaching in the classroom, and then by the next week they told us we had to go virtual. I have no experience teaching online. I didn't even know what programs were online. I knew of Google Classroom. I knew of a teacher who always used Google Classrooms, but I didn't know exactly how to use it myself. That year was actually especially stressful because I was also in a leadership program and trying to, teach and trying to learn how to teach digitally. And so one of the things I started doing is teaching myself how to use Google Classroom. Like I was doing it as I went. One of the hugest challenges was getting the kids to even show up to learn. So like, for example, the year COVID started, let's say I had about 90 kids. Mm-hmm. I had about maybe 20 or 25 show up throughout that whole
Wow.
period. So there was a lot of lost learning. A lot of the students were already a little bit behind grade level. So I was teaching 8th grade, and some of them were already like on a 4th grade level, 5th grade level, kindergarten level. So by not showing up, they felt even more behind, you know. Contacting parents was also a challenge because a lot of parents were working and they felt that they couldn't, you know, be responsible for their children. So I felt like I was a parent, a teacher, all of the above, and a learner at the same time. Because like I said, I was still trying to learn how to teach, you know, digitally and teach online as well. Every day I would call students and I would try to get them to come online. Some of my students, I had their phone numbers, so I would text them, and I'll have the students who always showed up reach out to other students to have them try to come to class. So it was not an easy feat. And then even now that you're saying post-COVID, if this is what we want to call it, because COVID is still alive and well, but post-COVID, now that we've stepped foot back in the classroom, we're kind of experiencing a lot of the same things as before COVID, because I just found out last week that this week we have to be fully remote teaching because the COVID cases are on the rise here. So this week I'm actually teaching virtually again. Obviously, this time it's a little easier because now I know more programs online. I know ways to have kids be interactive online. I have games, like a lot of kids like learning through games, which is interesting because I'm teaching them the same material that I would teach them as if it was not a game, but they, for some reason, find the games to be way more, they find the games to be way more exciting than, and even though I'm teaching them the same thing they need to know, regardless of whether it was a game or not. So finding ways to make math exciting during COVID has been a challenging, but it's been something that I've been able to do. It's worked, you know. The kids I have now, they're not struggling as much in terms of coming to class. Like out of the, I have about 50 something kids now, and I want to say, let's say I have 56 students, I want to say about 54 of them show up. So I have more kids that are actually showing up to class. I have more kids who are engaging now. I'm not sure if it's because now it's a private school versus a public school, but I definitely do see the difference in, you know, the engagement in the kids and them wanting to learn and them wanting to actually come to classes and not just making excuses. A lot of them turn on their cameras now. In the past, that was another challenge. I don't know who I was teaching to. I would call a child's name. Nobody would respond. I don't know if they were there. I don't know if they were sleeping, you know, because we wanted to give them the liberty of not having to have their camera on, but we also try to encourage them to have their camera on to make sure that they were there, you know, because it's hard. Like if you have, for example, now if I'm talking to you and the screen is blank, the engagement is not as much, right? Because you can't see me, you know, even though we're on a video, seeing someone on the other side makes a difference, you know. It gives it more, you know, it gives it more, at least more of a feel that so you're actually talking to somebody versus a blank wall or a black screen, you know. So there's a little bit more engagement now, and it's a little bit easier to get kids to come to class now. Again, I don't know if this is because I'm now in a private sector versus a public one, you know.
Okay. Yes, and it just shows the power of technology, how that things as simple as games can be instrumental in passing on knowledge to children as well.
Exactly. 100%, 100%.
So what opportunities are bound for people, for specifically women that study math, especially when you're looking at STEM as in the big picture?
Well, I'll see. So there are a couple of opportunities I will say have arisen for me in the past because of the school I worked in and because of the field I was in. So in America, and I think maybe a lot of other countries, math teachers are in high demand. Like you said, all the teachers in math, science, you know, technology, all these teachers are in high demand. And on top of being a math teacher, when I first started, I actually started at what was known as a Title I school. A Title I school here in New York City, pretty much a school that kids come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. And a lot of them, you know, are dealing with a lot of like mental and psychological trauma and things like that. So we had a lot of psychologists and therapists in our school. But on top of that, the way they wanted us teachers, especially those teachers of math, to grow is they would give us free schooling. So they would tell us, hey, since you are in this type of school, we want to give you the opportunity to get either pursue a second master's or pursue courses in a higher level, in a master's level, just free of credit. So I didn't have to pay for any of these classes. They offered it to me just because I was, a teacher studying mathematics, and in that program, even though there are not a lot of men in teaching or a lot of men in math, you did see a couple of them. Maybe out of the class of 30, maybe there are about 4 or 5 men. But yeah, this teaching is a female-dominated field, and one of the perks, like I said, was me being able to have like the free schooling. My first 4 years of working in the public school system, they gifted me some money just because I was a math teacher. I was in the STEM program, So there are a lot of perks of being in STEM, from like money being given to you, opportunities to learn for free. So those were some of the things I felt were great, because all I did was get a master's, in adolescent education, concentrating in math. I get all these perks, which is great. I think it's amazing.
I'm so glad that you said that over there. Yes, even here, teaching is a largely female-dominated field. But then you said even for math teaching as well. But over here, it's not largely dominated by females. Actually, you have more male teachers teaching math, technology, sciences than you have female teachers. So even here, in as much as in general, you'd say teaching is a largely female-dominated field. Those courses, STEM courses, usually are mostly handed off to male tutors and male teachers. Yeah, so it's encouraging to know that women are actually taking the gun there and they're doing so much more.
Oh yeah, no, there are a lot of there. Yes, 100%. And another thing is that one of the things that was also a perk, if you want to call it that, is you get to grade these state exams. You get to grade the regents, which is actually really good because you also see that material, how to better teach the material to your students, and you just understand what the expectations of this curriculum are going to be. And it's easier for you to like transcend and translate that information to your students once you experience even grading these exams, so yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that there's a high demand for math teachers and teachers in STEM generally. So I'm talking from here in Nigeria. Now, migration is one of the biggest things going on here. So if an individual, women and men as well, want to migrate to the teaching field from here to there, what would they need to have? What would they need to know beforehand before taking that plunge?
So if someone who left Nigeria and they said they wanted to come to New York specifically to teach?
The US in general.
First, they will need to have a master's. I remember when I first started, you could have a bachelor's degree, but then they changed. They said you can have a bachelor's as long as you're starting to pursue a master's degree directly after your bachelor's. So you need to have a master's. Well, it depends. Mine is, I'm certified 7th through 12th grade. So you take an exam. There are 3 exams you actually have to take. There's the LAST, not to be confused with the LSAT. LAST, which is pretty much like an exam about if you know what to do in the teaching field. There's this other one called the ATSW, which is kind of like a humanities kind of exam. And then there's your content. So whatever your content is, if your content is science, you have to take the science certification exam. If your content is math, you have to take the math, and so on and so forth. I took the math certification exam that would certify me from 7th to 12th grade math. Then if you want, you can get an extension, which I think you can get an extension 5th and 6th, but you don't have to take an exam for that, because obviously if you can pass an exam where you can teach 7th to 12th graders, then you should be able to get the 5th and 6th, right? But once you pass that exam, then you go to the Department of Education. This is if you want to teach in a public school. In a private school, you don't need anything. You can teach coming straight from Nigeria. They wouldn't require any credentials. But if you want to teach in a public school, you go to the Department of Education, you show them your credentials. Then they have to run fingerprints on you, see that your credentials are verified. They have to verify your credentials. It's so many steps. You have to call these people and then call these other people. So it's a lot of steps for you to finally get in. When I started the process, I knew I wanted to start teaching by September of 2015. That was when I started teaching with the Department of Education. So I started the steps honestly years before, obviously before between getting my master's and taking the exam. I think it was like 2 years for me to do this. Then that I want to say May or June, I started getting clearance for my fingerprinting, and then I started getting clearance for my background check because obviously they want to make sure you don't have any criminal charges and things like that. And then I got clearance for my test, like I think 2 days right before I started teaching. And then I was able to teach in the system. I actually didn't think I was going to start teaching on time because the paperwork takes time. You have to give yourself about 2 or 3 months for the paperwork to go through.
That's that's a lot of processes.
Yeah, it's a lot of time.
For a profession that's so important, impacting knowledge into the next generation, it's quite important to be thorough as well. So let's talk about work-life balance, work and personal life balance. So how do you balance both sides as well of the coin, especially as a woman? You get to spend so much time given, especially in your personal life, family, friends, and the rest. So how do you balance being a professional, an educationist, a woman in STEM, and your personal life as well?
Well, let me see. Lately that's become a little bit easier because a lot of people are staying home because of COVID. But when over the summertime I don't work, but when it starts getting warmer, when the weather is getting a little bit warmer and people want to go out, I usually try to budget my time a bit better. Like I know if sometimes I'm going to, have more of a personal life on a certain week, what I'll do is that weekend, either that Saturday or that Sunday, I'll plan for the entire week so that I don't have to worry about, every day coming, lesson planning for the next day, which sometimes I just lesson plan day to day. Before it used to take me over like an hour for each class to lesson plan, but now it takes me about 15 to 20 minutes per class. If not, sometimes I can do the lesson plan for 4 classes in 15 to 20 minutes. So it's made things the more you do something, the easier some of these things get. And one thing I started doing when the very, very beginning, it was very hard for me because between grading and doing this and grading is what takes the majority of your time. And I would spend almost my entire weekends grading just to go back to work on Monday and just be grading and working. Like I felt like when I first started working as a teacher, I was always working. Even when I was off, I was working, So now it's easier for me to balance because now when I go to school, I have the kids grade their homework. I no longer grade their homework. Before I used to grade their homework and that took so much time. The only thing I do now is grade tests, and I make sure I dedicate time at work to grade my tests so that when I come home, I'm just coming home. I promised myself, like I think it was 2 years ago, like around when the pandemic started, that I would no longer bring work to my house. I would do whatever work I needed to do at work. It was obviously a little bit more challenging when the pandemic hit because we had to work from home, but I had to cut out time and tell myself from when I start working, at 8 till 3, I'm going to find time through there to grade my work so that at 3 o'clock I'm done. Because during the pandemic, it was a little bit harder. There was no way to distinguish work from home. It was working from home and being at home was so it's hard, So I had to find a way to do that by cutting my time and sticking to strict deadlines and tell myself, if I'm done doing this, I'm done doing this. Because at the end of the day, I was always able to grade all the work by the end of the semester, and that's really what matters. But I find myself being an overachiever in the sense that I just want to try to grade as much as possible before the end of the day so I don't have more work piling on, And now that I've set my strict deadline and when I no longer want to work or I'm not working past this time, it's actually made it easier because during the school day, I dedicate that time to grading and things to do with work because then come 3 o'clock, I shut down. I'm no longer working. This is my personal time,
So you're strict with your time. Time management is key. You automate processes as much as you can.
Yes. Time management you really have to really have good time management and stick to it,
Definitely. So throughout your career, would you say there's anything that you would have done differently? And if there is, what would you have done differently?
Throughout my career, the one thing I wish I would have done differently, and it's still not late to do that. There's no time like the present, right? There are 2 things that I want to veer towards. The first thing is I would love to teach high school and college, the college level, the higher grades. And secondly, I would like to, at some point, open up my own online school and just, have my own hours, be my own boss, and be the person that people come to for smaller class sizes so that their kids can advance, as well as like be a curriculum builder or curriculum developer. So those are some things that I see myself doing in the future. Once I leave the teaching like in person, I'm ready to start doing it more virtual, building my own curriculum, and en route to opening my own online school.
Okay, so I would like to ask, you're currently a teacher here. Are there rooms, are there opportunities, and what kind of opportunities are there for people that want to transition to industry itself, not just be teachers anymore, but actually get into the nitty-gritty of the industry as a math professional, as a math educationist?
So what opportunities are there for people who want to be educationalists, or like, what do you mean?
Current educationalists who want to transition to industry itself, to the main industries as well, not just the education sector anymore, but then they want to, it could be engineering as a math person, it could be engineering, sciences itself, but then core industry work, not just as an education.
So like, for example, if I wanted to transition to like being an engineer or being into a different industry that's somehow related to math?
It's related to math, but it's not education.
That one, because it's interesting you say that, because I've been thinking of switching careers again. Like I said, I want to do, I have plans I want to do, but if you want to veer to another industry that's not necessarily educational, but it's still within the same field as you want, it depends what it is. Because I feel like something for engineering, I think you might have to go back and pursue another degree. But if it's something like, because a lot of teachers are doing now, a lot of teachers are leaving the field and you're doing things like I just said. A lot of them are doing curriculum development. They want to build their own curriculum because some of them feel they've been in the field for so long and don't feel like they're valued as teachers. But instead of being a teacher, they want to build these curriculums. They want to find ways to make learning easier for people. For that one, you don't need another degree. Those ones are a little harder to find. You just need to be consistent and persistent in finding these kind of jobs because everybody wants them. People want to do curriculum development. People want to build curriculums. People are ready to leave education altogether because, like I said, a lot of teachers feel undervalued. A lot of teachers are burnt out. A lot of teachers feel underpaid. So curriculum development is something that I've been seeing a lot of teachers, moving toward, or even private tutoring. A lot of teachers just private tutor from their homes. This is not something that you need an additional degree in. It's not necessarily teaching in the sense that you don't have to stick to a certain curriculum. You're just aiding a student get better in a skill that they don't necessarily have or they're lacking. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, fairly. So if you have any questions at this point, we'd like you to drop them in the comments section. You can also send us a DM with your questions. Would have Miss Elo refer to them. So just any questions you have, comments, please do also drop them as well. So Miss Elo, about to round up this interview. Thank you so much for joining us. Any last words, any words of advice for anybody who is considering a career, for women especially considering a career in STEM, and not just STEM, as an educationist of a STEM subject as well?
Yeah, well, I would say know what your passion is, know what your drive is, and never forget what reason you started your field. And know that there's always growth opportunities, you don't have to stay in one thing forever. It's okay to grow. I want to grow. I'm ready to grow. My words of encouragement is whatever motivation, whatever you drive you have, keep on with that. You'll always find the path that it is that you want to pursue. I know for me, someone told me, like I said, that I was going to be a teacher, I wouldn't have believed it. Now I would love to continue on the path of curriculum building, curriculum development, and even, doing my own online school tutoring or whatever it is. And I know I have the drive, I know I have the motivation. It's just a matter of time.
Wow, thank you so much for joining us on the show, Miss Elo. We are truly honored to have you on the show. We have learned so much from you. Thank you so much. You're such an encouragement to other women as well. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Like I said earlier, if you have comments, suggestions, you have questions as well, please do also drop them in the comment section. You can send us a DM as well. We will be glad to revert to Miss Elo and then answer all your comments and questions. Yes. So thank you so much for joining us on the show. A happy new year to you, Miss Elo. We
Likewise.
and we pray that in all of your other endeavors, it's all successful and that you surpass everywhere you want to be in your career. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's such a pleasure to have every one of you watch us. So thank you. Have a lovely day and a lovely new year as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You as well.